They explained to me what they were going to do. It was going to be ridiculously high-powered chemo called hyper-CVAD. They would administer that to me for over like 7 days, and it would kill all of my white blood cells. And then they would begin the process of bringing those white blood cells back, hopefully this time without the cancer in them. Okay, let's do it. I told the medical team, I'm not dying here. We're beating this. They weren't quite so optimistic. I had so many visitors those first few days. My parents were there. I saw my kids. It was okay. It was okay. It sucked, but it was okay. I had to have a spinal chemo done before they started the other chemo. And my sister-in-law had brought me a giant barbecue sandwich because that's what I wanted. And I ate the whole thing. I was hungry. I was on steroids. That was a mistake. I should not have eaten the whole thing before I had spinal chemo, but I didn't know what I was doing. The doctor came in, they laid me on my stomach, and he tried, failed, tried again, and failed. They have a very minor area that they can put it in. It's a couple of millimeters big, and the needle has to stick in there exactly. Out of everything I've gone through, that's one of the worst things that I went through. After he tried maybe the third time, my wife asked them, isn't there any other way you can do this? Is there not like an x-ray machine or something to show what's going on? They said, yeah, we can take him down to radiology. Genius idea. Why don't you start there? But the barbecue sandwich, oh man, no. It had made me sick by that point, combined with the failed spinal chemo. Anyway, I'm so upset by this point that as they're wheeling me out of the room, I'm being shot full of morphine by my great nurse. We went downstairs, did the radiology thing on the first try, had to lay on my back for a couple of hours to let everything, the spinal fluid settle. It was much better that way. Still very terrible, and I don't miss that at all. My parents were in the room. Something seemed off about my dad. He was okay, but, not right. Not that you can expect anybody who's, losing their son to leukemia to be okay, right? So that's got to be what this is. But he really wasn't okay. He kept declining. And my mom said that we're gonna have to take him home. She wanted to be there with me. Obviously, they wanted to be there. He had to go home. So they got in the car, drove back home. He should have stayed in Little Rock. Hindsight's 2020. But they drove and he kept declining. And over the next day, he kept declining and getting worse and worse and worse to the point where he was basically lethargic in his chair. He still wouldn't go to the hospital. But my mom called some guys from church, some of his friends, and they basically dragged him to the hospital. After, days and days of testing, they found out that it was West Nile virus, caused by a stupid little mosquito bite that he had had. This guy never gets bit by mosquitoes, but he did. And the one mosquito that bit him had West Nile virus. Probably wasn't gonna make it. They had to keep him in the hospital. Had to. For nearly a month. So I'm sitting in the hospital in Little Rock, dying. My wife is there with me. My in-laws now have the kids. My dad is sitting in a hospital in Texarkana, dying of West Nile virus. It's a pretty hopeless situation. Pretty much, something that you don't think can happen. I mean, how much can one family take? Don't ever say those words. My mom, who really needed to be with me because her son was in the hospital and it was not looking good, had to stay there with him because he needed her worse. And I had my own wife there. It's gonna be okay. I got my first 7 days of chemo, and it was honestly quite a bit easier than expected. You hear horror stories of people vomiting all the time and it just declining rapidly. I didn't do any of that. I was fine. And I kept having that peace that I had. Everything was okay. I had some migraines. Those were bad. I had some major weight gain from all the steroids I was on. I gained about 50 pounds in 3 days, and that is super uncomfortable. We had to keep all the lights off in the room because, it was migraines. They were bad. That's about the extent of the side effects that I had from chemo before the chemo really took over. During that time, while I was having the migraines, my grandmother and my aunt, my uncle drove in from West Texas. They needed to see my dad and they needed to see me. So they made the 12-hour drive to Little Rock. And it was so good to see them. But, when people do that, like on a whim like that, things aren't looking good for you. That doesn't just happen. It was a tough time. It was tough. The chemo worked. My white count went down to 0, which, means that I had no immune system whatsoever. And it was now time to just wait in the hospital and see if the numbers come back up. And then see if I still have leukemia. At that point, they moved us to a different room that had opened up. Probably somebody had died or something. And it was nice. They knew we were going to be there a while, so they gave us a big room. Had a great view of the fountain out front. And just looking out there gave me hope. I was allowed, before the white count dropped down to nothing, I was allowed to walk around the hospital with a mask on. I remember going outside to that fountain. It was something about the fountain. It was nice. They only let you get a better room if they know you're going to be there a while. Obviously, we were going to be there a while. The night was dark. The fear was real. But I did need a wake-up call. The storm was so real. It was so bad. The nights got lonely. I did everything I could to read my Bible, talk to God, try to find peace in this storm. And I did. That peace that passes all understanding, it was there the whole time. I knew I wasn't going to die. I was going to be okay. This was just a bad time. The doctors were, saying other things, but I knew it wasn't my time. I'd been through this, before as a child, not leukemia, but with a kidney disease. And God healed me of that. And if He can do it then, He can do it now. But still, it's scary. It's real. I had to miss my daughter's 6th birthday party. One of my good friends, she put on a birthday party for her at our church fellowship hall, and so many people came to support her. They put us on the screen so that we could be at the party even though we weren't at the party. I got to see the whole thing, but it's not the same. Thankfully, it was a couple of days before her birthday, and on her actual birthday, she would be there with me so that I could see her. I thought.